True Conversations, giving the environment a voice.
Hi, and welcome to True Conversations. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're coming to you from and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'm Kathy McLeish, a senior journalist and your host for today, along with True's Dr. David Waters. Hi, Dave.
Kathy. Thank you.
I'd just like to get to sort of set the scene.
Yeah.
What's your definition of natural capital?
Thanks, Kathy. So my tweak on the textbook definition of natural capital is it's the renewable and non-renewable assets such as land, water, air, soil, and all living things that we value environmentally, economically, socially, and culturally. Now, the interesting thing is that when we've talked to different people from different industries, people have a different view on what natural capital means to them. And I guess that was part of our motivation for running the Natural Capital Truey Conversation series, is that it'd be nice to hear from people from different sectors and different industries and get their take on natural capital and how it impacts on them and their business and how they're incorporating it as part of their business.
Thanks, Dave. And I'm very pleased to be able to introduce our guest, Natalie Hick. Natalie is the founder and managing director of Natural Capital Company, or Natcapco, a specialist ESG and natural capital project management and advisory company undertaking feasibility and viability assessments of projects for offsets and credits, carbon project management, carbon footprint calculations, and emissions accounting. Natalie has 25 years of experience as a cattle producer and is a Nuffield Scholar specialising in soil carbon and carbon markets. In addition, she's the CEO of Southern Queensland Landscapes NRM Group, a natural resource management group that helps landowners improve their land in ethical ways. Welcome, Natalie.
Thanks for the introduction. Thank you for the accolades, but it doesn't, it doesn't sort of, you don't, until somebody sits there and tells you back what you've done over the years, you don't sort of realise it, just because it doesn't happen quickly. Being in this space it has been an evolving mix of different career pathways and pivots and whatever over the years. So yeah.
Yeah, and the whole sector has changed as well, hasn't it? In the time that you've been involved, you would have seen massive changes.
Definitely.
Can I sort of start out by just asking you then, tell us a bit about yourself, but also your role in the natural capital sector.
So I was actually a nurse for many years, but along with being a nurse, my ex-partner and I had cattle properties in Western Queensland where we managed them under regenerative sort of systems and processes. When we started this, that wasn't really a thing that long ago. So we purchased our first property in 1998 and pretty much started doing stuff regeneratively since then. So the concepts of cell grazing and rotational grazing were quite new when we started, and it was a lot of trial and error. Money being put into our businesses. But what it did was give me a long lead time and on-ground and very much tangible understanding of what happens when you start fixing ecosystems. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, looking at overland flows. At the time, tree clearing was not a problem, and we did things like cleared timber that needed clearing. It was needed very much thinning out and things like that. But it changed the way we looked at soil. The thing that I like about being in this sector is the fact that with environmental or natural capital improvements, you also get productivity improvements, and you also get animal health improvements. You get ecosystem health overall. And along with that, you get financial uplift. So what I like is that it's not mutually exclusive. You're not doing environmental or, landscape scale stuff at the peril of cattle production or production in whatever form it is. It's great that it's synergistic.
Were you surprised to find that, at the outset, did you wonder if that was going to be the case?
Was pretty young when we started this. I think I was 23 when we started managing that particular property. Yeah, I guess over the years, what we didn't anticipate was the level of improvements. I thought that things would improve, you know, maybe we could double our carrying capacity with cattle, but we in fact did 7 times the area average in carrying capacity. So, and there was still more, you know, I'm sure the landscape still had more oomph to get out of it in terms of improvement. So those things, the tangible benefits, yes, I am surprised over the years. It's not quick. You know, none of this happens overnight. The impact of doing regenerative land management practices seems to be exponential. So what I mean by that is the improvements that you get in the first 5 years, the next 5, you almost double that again. So there's an exponential increase. In hindsight, we should have probably done a lot more at the start, and it would have increased or made it more rapid, the improvements in the landscape. But I guess that's where I come from with Natural Capital Co. is from a very much grounded, having had done the hard yards in terms of watching ecosystems improve over time and watching what land management activities actually do to the landscape and how it does improve.
So, Nat, interesting. I heard you mention the word landscapes a few times. Do you think getting into the regenerative agriculture, that sort of got you sort of out of thinking that, you know, mindset of sort of paddocks and thinking landscapes? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, at the time it was more, how do we make more money to make this property viable and feasible? And so it was those endeavours going, okay, well, if we increase the grass on the property, we're going to be able to run more cattle, produce more kilos of beef per hectare. That's got to be a win. So it wasn't necessarily from an environmental perspective that we came from. It was from a financial imperative that we did it initially. But then over time you sort of go, well, you know, there's other bits and pieces to this. There's the birds and the, you know, lizards and all that, the little paddy melons that all turned up that hadn't been seen for 30 years, all that sort of thing happens. Clear water running off our property, you know, running in muddy and running out of our creeks at the other end clear. So there's all those co-benefits that we as young, you know, young people in coming into the industry didn't really, you know, consider.
Yeah.
How do you define and describe natural capital, and what does it mean to you?
Natural capital to me is the tangible components of ecosystems. And like David said, that's water, air, it's the animals within it, it's the soil, it's what's in the soil, it's all those tangible things within a landscape that we take for granted unless you're consciously thinking about it. But it is those ecosystem benefits that when you buy a block of land or you manage a property that are not really considered on a balance sheet. So that's what I think of natural capital. Capital is money. Natural capital is all the non-tangible or non-balance sheet items, I guess you would put it, that are the natural attributes of a property, or a piece of land.
How valuable is it to be able to quantify that, you know, that natural?
Extremely important. I mean, when you look at the value of properties and how they're traditionally valued by valuers, in some aspects, natural capital is put into those calculations because Brigalow country that's been cleared has a, you know, much higher value than the middle of the desert out in Western Queensland or out in the Northern Territory. So it is somewhat valued in the mainstream way we do it, but in terms of environmental markets and monetising natural capital, it is extremely important.
What do you see as the greatest challenge that the industry faces?
At the moment is the disunity in terms of how environmental markets are progressing towards something that is safe and reputable and trustworthy. My view has been that carbon has been the metric on which that natural capital has been based on, but it's very quickly, I reckon, will be overtaken with the biodiversity and the nature repair side of it. So what I think is there is some egos. There's a lot of egos in the sector, and I think that once the personalities and the characters of the early people that are leading the industry, once that sort of settles down a bit, hopefully we'll have some unity, and it'd be really great if the biodiversity and the nature repair side of it doesn't make the same mistakes that happened in the carbon side of it. I was at the biodiversity conference in Canberra not last week, the week before, and it just feels like the carbon industry 10 years ago. And I just hope that the biodiversity side of it doesn't go down those same paths as people with egos sort of trying to row their boat and other people not sort of coming on board. So yeah, it'd be nice if they looked at towards the carbon sector to not make those same mistakes again.
So Nat, I'm aware that you work with a lot of landholders across Northern Australia. Would you say there's a greater awareness now about, beyond carbon, to talk about biodiversity and nature repair, as you alluded to? Would you say in a lot of the landholders you work with in the north?
Yep, there is. There's also it's much more in people's coming into their social media feeds, and the Beef Week this year, a lot of the lectures and things were on natural capital and ESG based type subjects. So yes, and those sessions were pretty much at capacity, a lot of those. So yes, it is on the radar for most people. But again, there's differing opinions on where it sits and people's appetite for natural capital type projects.
What do you see as the greatest opportunity for the industry?
I think that the agricultural industry probably needs to take a more active role in how the decision making of how these particularly in the methods and how credits are calculated, and I think it's pretty disparate between the scientists and the likes of me that are trying to develop up projects and the landholder input. And I think that lag in uptake or enthusiasm in the agricultural sector has somewhat stymied uptake, because a lot of the agricultural different sectors have haven't been engaged from the get-go, and so the markets have developed in isolation to agriculture, yet agriculture needs to be the biggest beneficiary and can make the biggest impact. So there's been some disengagement there, and I think that going forward with the biodiversity side of it, hopefully it won't, agriculture will be much more receptive to being involved in those sectors. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully we've learned a lot from what happened with the development of the carbon market, that we can get to a good place a lot quicker this way with the biodiversity market.
Yeah.
So where would you love to see all of this land in, say, 5 years?
So in 5 years, I would love to see that we have a single sort of, I wouldn't say single desk, but some sort of trading mechanism that allows landholders to go on and be able to trade their carbon credits, their biodiversity offsets, their nature repair management credits in one smooth system. and not have to be doing things across different platforms and different legislation and different methodology and different departments. It'd be great if it was all synergistic and be able to be, to have an environmental market platform, which is similar to other, the way you broker other credits and other, financial mechanisms.
You think that's, do you see a pathway for reaching that sort of goal?
I do, but I don't have the resources or the assets to be able to do that. But I think there's some pretty well-meaning people within the natural capital sector that are trying to make that happen. Again, it's whether the egos can jump out of the way and let people be able to do that in a timely manner. 5 years, if I look at what's happened in the last 10 years in the carbon industry, it has sort of floundered around a little bit. So hopefully learning from that, the biodiversity and the broader natural capital markets will be able to do that much more efficiently. There's a lot of lessons that have been learned from the carbon, monetising carbon. So, yeah.
Yeah. Dave, you seem in furious agreement with that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As I said earlier, I'm hoping we can learn from the mistakes of the past and get there a lot quicker, for the environment's sake anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, agriculture's got a huge opportunity to be involved in the natural capital space. And I think that doesn't just improve what you're doing for your livestock, it improves it for everybody else. And farmers who hold 55 or more % of the nation can't bear the financial burden of doing this for the whole of the community without being incentivised to do it. It is important that to get it done and done properly and fix some of our soils. I mean, when you look at the old soil results from when the Liverpool Plains soil results, where soil had 11, 12% carbon, you know that there's a lot of room for improvement in not just soils, but what happens on top of the soils then. I was reading a thing about a painted snipe this morning, and this bird actually benefits from agricultural input and, the artificial waters that have been created with dams. It's actually helping maintain the breeding ability of, these really obscure little birds that hardly anyone sees. So I don't think that locking country up to be mutually involved in environmental projects is necessarily correct. I think that, and in terms of carbon projects, I know that you're not allowed to do that anymore anyway. You've got to maintain agricultural production when you register a carbon project. So I hope that the biodiversity goes the same way. That we've got. It's important to understand food and water security for future generations as well. So that would be what I'd hope, is that improving the landscape also improves food and water security for our future generations and my great-grandkids and my great-great-grandkids, I guess. Yeah.
And I think that's where the work of Farming for the Future is so important, because they are working to demonstrate that you can still run a productive agricultural business with financial and environmental gains as well.
Yep. Yeah. That's been my experience over the last, probably 25, 30 years, is that it does work together. So, yeah, particularly in livestock ecosystems and a lot of the rangeland areas where I'm used to working and where there's opportunity for, economy of scale in improving those ecosystems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is there one key message that you would have about natural capital?
Don't be scared of it, and don't look at it as a threat to your business. In my experience, early days, we were sort of considered, odd in our community because we were doing that sort of rotations and things. But And I actually got told once that unless we had off-farm income, there's no way we'd be able to do what we were doing. But I think a lot of that stigma has pretty much gone now. And I would say that rather than shying away from it and thinking that it's, another imposition being put on landholders, it's from my experience that it hasn't been the case, and that most people that are doing carbon farming or natural capital focused activities are actually reaping the rewards for that. What I do see is that my clients that are, registered carbon projects, every time there's negative media out, we just sort of click it up and go, okay, that'll lift the carbon price by, $5 or $6 a credit, while everyone's floundering around because the demand worldwide for those types of credits is just increasing. Natural capital is very much nature-based when you're looking at it from a farm level. Once you register a project, it becomes a financial instrument. So farmers have got to play in a space that's one day they go out and they're doing the stuff on ground, and they're very much, in the dirt, looking at animals, trees, whatever. They go back to their office, and then natural capital becomes a financial instrument to them, and what credits are sitting at, bit, like what the share market would be. So they've got to have their headspace in two completely different sections. That is, I think, what causes a lot of, people to be unsure, is that you have to have one foot in the on-ground tangible, in the dirt sort of thing, and then you've got to have the other foot in the markets, in financial markets and financial instruments. And I think that gap needs to be closed up a bit, and then I think confidence in natural capital markets will improve.
So it's also about, sort of more experience with the sector, more understanding, and kind of, I guess, the maturation of the sector as well, of the work.
Yeah, and people that are doing projects, or carbon project developers and natural capital project developers, we do cop a bit of flack from the scientific community, from ag lobby organisations and stuff. But my thoughts with that are that it's buyer beware, I guess. If someone comes in and tells you you're going to make a heap of money in the first couple of years, they're the ones that obviously haven't done a lot, haven't done the hard yards. Natural capital improvement is very rewarding, but it's a long game. And we've sort of run down our natural assets over the last 100 or so years, when industrial agriculture really kicked off. We can't expect it to be back brimming with life and everything in 2 or 3 years. So my sort of thoughts are that if you have to undertake long-term contracts, because it takes a long time to reverse and improve the natural assets of the landscape. So that would be my advice to people. It would be to know that you're going into a long game. It is a long contract, and that your kids will be still sort of reaping the benefits of it when they take on the farm, or when they improve what they're doing. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme by any stretch at all.
Just picking up on your point, Nat, about the scientists, and I guess coming from a scientist perspective, it is also important, I think, that we do have methods and we do quantify, these things well, because I guess the danger is that, the bad publicity can set the process back a long way. So I guess, would you see the balancing act there between, coming from the landholder's perspective and the scientist's perspective, that is, how do we sort of meet somewhere in the middle? Would that be one of the challenges you'd see?
Yep, and I saw that at play at Beef Week this year. The scientists were quoting, we've got 100 peer-reviewed papers that you can't sequester soil carbon in rangelands. Well, that has not been my experience. You can sequester, and it's not been the experience of my clients and a lot of people across the rangelands. So whilst you can use science in two ways. You can either use science to progress something, or you can use it, which I think it's being used at the moment, to, I don't know why you don't want people to progress, but I guess yes, I agree. I wish there was more science being done in the natural capital space, and I think it's really important that there is money, lots of money put into that area, researching natural capital and natural ecosystems and how to improve them. But continuously saying and referring to old science is probably not helpful.
So lots of work to be done, but lots of compelling reasons to do it.
Oh, completely. Yeah. I think 5 years, back to your question about 5 years, I think 10 years, I'm really interested to see where we'll be in 10 years and what's happened with landscapes over that time. Yeah, I love working in this space. I love that it's so nascent, and it's, it's almost still Wild West a little bit, with people trying different things and different, research sites and anecdotal evidence and what landholders are doing. I think it's a nice time to watch all this evolve, and hopefully in 5 years there should be some sort of consolidation and path forward in really good sort of research. But then in 10 years it'd be really good to see people and agriculture really monetising this and making the most of it.
Yeah, can I suggest we probably can't wait 10 years, I think.
That's true. It'd be nice if it happened in 5. I reckon we could do it in 5 if we learn the lessons from the carbon side of things, and hopefully that will happen. We just take some strong leadership from the overall natural capital space, and hopefully it'll happen in 5 years. But 10 years, you'd think it'd be humming along by then.
Fantastic. Natalie, thanks so much for sharing your experience and perspectives on this and knowledge. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Nat. Thank you.
Truey Conversations is brought to you by Truey. We create data-driven web applications that give the environment a voice. Thanks to our host, Kathy McLeish, and our regular contributor, Dr. David Waters. Our producer is Kelly Fisher. Our graphics are done by Tash Venz. I'm Bonnie Marsh, co-founder of Truey, and I really hope that you've enjoyed today's conversation. Thank you very much for being here with us, and I look forward to seeing you next time.